Hello, middle-aged gamers. We are back with just me and Adam, the OG crew from middle-aged gaming, but we still miss Antoine and Phil, of course. Today, we're going to be talking about games we are playing, because I miss games as much as I love philosophical topics. I love games, even if I've heard about a game 100 times, and we're going to talk about games that we have talked about privately and publicly as well. So you guys can probably guess what I'm going to be talking about today. But Adam, tell us more about Othercide and for people who do not know what it is.
Yeah, so I've started Othercide as part of my Halloween. I wanted to pick some spooky stories, or spooky games, I should say. And I had bought Othercide a while ago because it was on sale on PSN. And it's an SRPG. I really like SRPG, so I was like, all right, I'll give it a try. And it's kind of funny because I was looking at it and I was like, yeah, reading about it. I'm like, I like SRPGs, but this one doesn't really seem like it's for me,
What
but
is an
it's on sale.
SRPG for people?
Very good question. An SRPG is a strategy RPG. So basically, you have all kinds of different RPGs. You have your regular RPGs, which is a role playing game. And so, you take on the role of a certain character and you go on quests. And basically, traditionally, that was your Dungeons and Dragons style game. And now in video games, they kind of emulate that. So you're on some kind of quest or something like that. And then you have your ARPGs, because RPGs traditionally were turn-based. So you would take your turn, you would do an attack, your enemy would do their turn, they'd do an attack. Then we've moved on to ARPGs, which are probably closer to Legend of Zelda, which is done in real time. The A stands for action RPGs. And now we have SRPGs, which are strategy RPGs, where the combat is done more in a chess-like style. So you have all your different units. Usually they have different capabilities, similar to, in chess, a rook and a knight move differently. Usually in these cases, you have different skills, so you move them around, and then they can, attack. And there's a little more strategy involved in placement and manipulating either some kind of turn order or, a lot of times they'll have things like backstabs and stuff like that, So placement and manipulating this turn order and buffing and debuffing and all that are really, really important.
What
So
are some examples, that popular examples of SRPGs that people might know? And the Final Fantasy question, would traditional Final Fantasy combat be considered an SRPG?
traditional Final Fantasy, no, that was turn-based, so that would not be considered an SRPG because if you're not moving the characters around, you're just using your attacks basically. And in that case, you do have some manipulation in some of the games. The original Final Fantasy was just turn-based, but in some of the games later on, they would have the active time meter or active time battle, where your character basically has a speed stat and it charges, and when it's fully charged, you can attack, and you can slow characters down and speed them up to affect who's attacking in what order. So there was some strategy to it, but mostly it's still predominantly a turn-based system where you're thinking, okay, this guy's weak against fire, I'll use a fire attack. This guy's weak against lightning, I'll use a lightning attack. More like Pokemon in a way. Actually, a lot like Pokemon in a way. Pokemon is very much a turn-based RPG. But probably the most popular SRPGs are Final Fantasy Tactics, obviously. Is probably the most well-known one, if not one of the most well-known ones. And that it's not the first, though. We had Tactics Ogre before it. XCOM is another really popular one. I would say
We've
probably
talked about Tactics Ogre and XCOM on the show as
yeah.
well.
So I would say XCOM and Final Fantasy Tactics are probably the two best-known SRPGs. And if I remember correctly, was it Shadow Warrior has one as well? Isn't there a Shadow Warrior Tactics or something like that?
You mean Shadow Tactics?
Shadow Tactics, yeah, isn't that a SRPG?
But that's the game that you played, right?
No, isn't that the? That's a different one. I'm thinking of what's the one that you played? Didn't you play one that was kind of? I don't remember.
An SRPG?
Oh, you
Shadow?
thought it was like Shadow
Oh
Warrior.
my god. No, that is not ringing a bell at the moment.
Oh well, or I don't know how to pronounce it. Disgaea.
Oh yes, yes.
That's
I don't know
another
how to pronounce it. I always
SRPG.
say Disgaea, but I'm pretty sure
Disgaea.
that's wrong.
Yeah, so these are all SRPGs. Typically, you or Fallout Tactics. There was a Fallout game that was an SRPG. So there's quite a few of them out there, and I typically really enjoy them. So when I saw this one, I was like, okay, that looks interesting. But looking at it, oh, the color palette, they just use black, white, and red. The three colors, that's it. And it has roguelike elements. So it's like, oh, so I'm not going to be building up my characters. So on paper, I was looking at it, and I'm like, this doesn't seem like it'll appeal to me, but it is an SRPG and it is on sale and it was super cheap. So I was like, all right, I'll pick it up.
How much is super cheap?
It was something like 60 to 80% off. I don't remember exactly how much it
Oh
was.
my god, that is super cheap.
Yeah, it was because it was a while ago. It was one of the, I believe, double dip sales where sometimes PlayStation will do this thing where they give you a sale, and if you have PlayStation Plus, they'll double the percentage off. So if it's 40% off, if you have PS Plus, it's 80% off. And if it's 30% off, if you have PS Plus, it's 60%
Nice.
off. Yeah, so they'll do something like that. So it was one of those sales. Um, and I could not have been more wrong. I absolutely love this game. It's fantastic. So getting into the details, it's developed by Lightbulb Crew. It is published by Focused Home Interactive. It was released for the PlayStation, the PC, and the Xbox back on July 28th, 2020, and it was available on the Switch on September 10th, 2020. So if you have a PC or console, you can play this game. It is not available, to my knowledge, on mobile, but it probably could run on mobile. It's not very intensive, it seems. So yeah, like I said, I chose it because I love these SRPGs. I just like I don't know, the cerebralness of them or whatever. But, or maybe it's just nostalgia for Final Fantasy Tactics, but I really enjoy them. And the thing that I was thinking I wouldn't like is part of what I really enjoyed about these things is that you really get to build a character. A lot of your characters typically start off very basic. Maybe they have a class system, and they start off very low level, and as you level them up, you can customize some of their abilities usually. So you can choose like, oh, I want, in Final Fantasy Tactics, what you could do is you could pick a class, and a class had a set abilities, and then you could pick a subclass, and then you would get access to the abilities of that class. So when you combine these together, you can get some really interesting combinations. For example, if you combine a black mage with a white mage, black mages are attack magic, white mages are heal magic. So you'd have this really powerful caster who's good at both attacking and healing. But at the same time, you could have combined, say, a black mage with a samurai, which seems like a really odd choice. But the samurai would draw spirits out of weapons, and so you could use your magic for long range, and you could draw these spirits out for short range to either replenish your mana or stun enemies as they got too close to you, so you'd have time to run away. So there's a lot of choice in these games typically that you can customize and build characters the way you want to kind of build your own team. And in this game, the idea was you would play, and what really worried me was typically there's some mechanic for healing. And in this game, there's no mechanic for healing. Your guys take damage, and it just dwindles down until they die. And when all your guys are gone, you restart at the beginning of the game. So it's kind of got some roguelike elements in there. So a rogue game, or a roguelike, is a game where you play through, you die, that's it. It's kind of an Iron Man thing where if you're out, you're out, and you have to start over. Whereas roguelite or roguelike are typically these games where usually when you make some progress, you die, you start over, but usually you retrain some kind of progress. Maybe you maintain your levels, or maybe you maintain certain kinds of gear or something like that. So each time you're progressing a little bit further. And so not being able to heal kind of concerned me, except the way that you do heal is you have to sacrifice characters for each other. So if you have, and you can only sacrifice people of equal or higher level. So if I have a level 4 person and I need to heal that level 4 person, I need to sacrifice one of my other level 4 characters or a character of a higher level. But what that'll do is that'll full heal my character, and they'll gain some stat buffs from the character that was sacrificed. So you'll get some advantages. This character will become stronger for it. And as it turns out, there are ways to revive downed characters, you can either do special missions that'll give you a resource that you can do it, or as you progress through the game, you can restart. You can restart with certain character, a certain number of characters revived, and so playing through it, that concern was basically taken out. I was not concerned about that once I started playing the game. It wasn't an issue. It does have some limited classes. It's only really got 4, and you only start with 3. I haven't accessed the 4th one yet, but you start with 4. You can't change a character's class once they start, so whatever a character starts as, they are locked into that class. But you do still get some customization, because when they reach certain levels, they'll have a choice of acquiring one of 2 abilities, so you can choose which ability you want to use. And abilities basically come in 2 varieties. You have abilities that use action points. So your character, every time their turn comes up, they have 100 action points to spend. And you can use your action points to use these abilities. Other abilities you have to sacrifice a % of your life for. And those abilities are typically more powerful or really strong. But again, you can't normally heal. So there's a trade-off there. So there is that strategic element in it. And it's also really interesting because the way they do combat is they have a bar, and the bar goes from 0 to 100. And when your character, they typically start at 50. And then there are ticks, and the game counts down until it's the next character's turn, whether it's you or an enemy. And then they do their action, and then they get reset at 50. So you typically start off with, like I said, 100 action points. You can use 50 action points, and if you use 50 or less, you get reset to the 50 point. Or you can do what's called, I think it's called boost or overdrive or something like that. And if you use over 50 action points, so you can do more, but your character will be reset to 100. So there's that strategy of, okay, I can either do less, but then I'll be able to take my turn sooner, or I can do more, but my character will be pushed back on the line, and that actually can impact, it'll give enemies an opportunity to attack more because, they might get 2 attacks to your 1. So that's really interesting. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting after playing that I didn't really realize is it really gives you an in-depth idea of how the AI in the game works. It'll tell you specifically how each enemy operates. So it'll say, like, this enemy will always attack the closest daughter. Your characters are called daughters. Will always attack the closest daughter. Or this one will always attack the furthest daughter. Or this one will always attack the daughter with the lowest life. And so because of that, as you learn the enemies, you can predict what their next moves are going to be. And you have to so you have to look at this bar, see which enemies are attacking, see what order they're attacking in, and then you'll know how they're going to act. So then it's kind of like a puzzle to figure out, how can I clear this level taking as little damage as possible. And so a lot of times, if you're really good at it, you can actually clear an entire level and never take any damage. But that's what I like about it. Typically it's not so much like a game of chess where you're trying to play against the PC. It's more of a puzzle where you're trying to figure out, how can I get through this with as little damage as possible. So it's a different kind of strategy. And that really appealed to me. And I didn't realize that it was going to be like that. And it's something that I think, looking at reviews and things like that, it's not something that's intuitive. It's not something that you would realize. You really have to play it to kind of see it. And then you're like, oh, okay, I'm starting to get it. And yeah, and then, the fact that you can resurrect certain characters and stuff, so you're boosting certain characters up and you're using the other ones as kind of fodder to carry the game further and whatnot. And so, yeah.
Hey, didn't you have some video you wanted to show us?
Oh, yeah, I totally forgot the video. I've been doing all this talking, and yeah, I have the video right up here.